All right, everyone. Welcome to another Ask Philip. This is for Friday, January 17, 2025. This is our Q&A that we do in the Wits and Weights Facebook community. If you are not in already, if you're watching this through YouTube, the link to join is below. It's free. A great community to support you on your journey toward better health, fitness, strength training, building muscle, losing fat, all of that jazz. So today, as always, I have a couple quick announcements before we get started. The first announcement is that the 2025 podcast listener survey is open through the end of the month. We've got about, I want to say 15 to 20 responses so far. I'm hoping to get closer to 50 like we did last year. If you take the survey, you have a chance to win a free month of access to Physique University, though you can opt out of that and just take the survey. Your input. Hopefully you realized last year, if anybody who follows the podcast, I took a lot of your feedback into the show to continue making it better. And I plan to do that again this year. Lots of great things already planned, but I want to hear what you have to say specifically, and I will absolutely take action on that. So please take the survey. The link is in the community. It's also in some of my recent podcast episodes. You can find it in the show notes. The next announcement, as always, is the episodes that came out this week, just so you're aware in case you missed them or want to prioritize a specific topic. On Monday, we had my solo episode about eating food, how to eat more food if you are feeling stuffed or having trouble, if you're trying to gain weight, or even if you're just trying to get to maintenance. And many of my clients struggle with that when we start, is just eating more in general. This gives you some specific strategies to do that, 12 in fact. And then Wednesday's episode was about biofeedback, and I gave you a bunch of ways to track biofeedback. You don't have to do them all, but they're, creative ideas in case you haven't thought of those. And then today's episode that came out is the interview episode of the week with Ali Shapiro. Ali's great. I think you're going to love this conversation. It is one of my, I'm not going to say one of my favorite of all time, but it is a favorite in terms of the guest. I really liked Ali. Sometimes I'll say you're surprised you don't know, because I didn't know her other than her own podcast. And then when you have the conversation, it turns out really well. And this topic is extremely important to all of us. And that is whenever you have food noise, or you binge, or even just the average person, myself included, who might get off track or might, fall into a trap of eating too much of something we'd rather not. What are the real issues going on? And we actually break down the framework of how to identify triggers in a very practical, understandable way. We get into psychology, but it's not complicated. It's pretty straightforward. There are different triggers, and they have to do with what needs are or are not being met that you end up meeting with food, and how you can meet them instead without food. So really cool episode. Check that out. If you don't already follow the show, please do. And I always appreciate reviews. Reviews really help the show. In Apple, if you do a 5-star rating and review would be awesome. And then last but not least, our newer podcast, Nutrition Science Daily, is now like 5 weeks in. This is a 5-minute at most daily podcast about something in the world of nutrition science, studies, news, TikTok trends, popular articles that come out that I want to comment on. A little of everything. I'm kind of having fun with it, and hopefully you are as well. If you don't follow this yet, it's super short. Every day, comes out in the morning, and you can find it on all platforms. Again, it's called Nutrition Science Daily. I don't know if you can see that with, you can see the picture there. So definitely give that a follow. And also, since it's a new show, I would appreciate you guys going into Apple and putting in ratings and reviews to kind of bump that up, because I think it has like a 4.6 rating because somebody gave it a 2 or 3 or something in addition to the 5. So that would be really helpful. But anyway, we're here for you today to answer your questions. And the way we do this is under the featured posts, which you can see here, or if you're on mobile, you can go to the top and tap featured. You will see this Ask Philip live. And it goes up every other week. You just have to comment with your question and I answer it. Okay, so we have 3 questions today, 2 from Jerry and 1 from Angela. And the 2 from Jerry are, we're going to start there. So the first one is about alcohol. And I love this question. In fact, I'm going to do a whole episode as a result of seeing this. Something about the 4th macro, because not sure many of you are aware, right? Protein, fats, carbs are the 3 macros we talk about. Alcohol is technically the fourth macro. Now, somebody would say water is a macro as well, even though it doesn't provide energy. I don't call it a macro for that reason. It doesn't provide energy, even though it's essential for life. So, excuse me, but alcohol is a macro, but it works a little bit differently. And so Jerry's question hits on that. I'm going to answer it kind of high level today, and then I'll go into detail on an upcoming episode. The question is, how does alcohol consumption impact body composition, like body fat? I understand the addition to total calorie, sugar, and carb consumption, so it could blow your calorie deficit up. Question is more about the alcohol itself. So let's break it up into some buckets. The main bucket here that I think affects, not the main one, but a very important one, is the priority of how alcohol is prioritized when it's metabolized. So it goes through the liver, and when you drink alcohol, it is the only thing your body can metabolize first, and that's because you can't store it. You can't convert it to body fat. So it immediately starts prioritizing that, and therefore it suppresses the oxidation of fats and carbs. And so during that time, you're just not going to burn fat or energy from anything else. Having said that, at the end of the day, what matters is the net calorie consumption. But there is a little bit of a dip in potential fat burning and efficiency of how you use the nutrients because of that. So it's not just a clean one for one. So that's important to understand, is that when you drink alcohol, it's prioritized over everything else. The second thing is, there is research, and I haven't talked about this as much, that shows that if you drink alcohol regularly, or you drink it like after exercise at some point, it can decrease your muscle protein synthesis a lot, like a lot. And there was a study in PLOS1, that showed that even when you're consuming protein, it's going to reduce your MPS rate, your muscle protein synthesis rate. And then that suppresses your overall ability to build muscle. Maybe it's mitigated if you're eating tons of protein, right? So think about that. And then you mentioned the calories, right? So alcohol has 7 calories per gram versus carbs and protein have 4. Fat has 9. So it's a little bit less dense than fat, but it's still energy dense. And so it's easy to overconsume in terms of hormones or calories. And then it also affects your hormones. I did that episode with Carolina Jadkowska quite a while back, and she talked a lot about it's a depressant, right? It depresses hormones, but it does so even more than we think. If you're a regular consumer over days, weeks, we're talking testosterone and all your hormones. And then it also potentially influences your appetite regulating hormones. And we know this, man. Like even when you have one drink, you start getting a little buzz, you start getting hungry, you want to eat more. And then more drinks than that actually just knocks your inhibitions altogether, and that causes lots of other issues. So like when you're blacked out, Jerry, and you don't remember what happened the night before, just assume you flipped on the seafood diet and had like 2,000 more calories, and just log that. So that's kind of high level. Hopefully that gets at what you're talking about. Calories matter, I'll say, the most, but alcohol has other insidious things that it does that are only negative. There's no positives about alcohol whatsoever. And I will talk about that on the episode. All right. The second question is, are there any supplements that have good scientific pedigree for maintaining or improving joint health? For example, for a slightly past middle-aged lifter who's beginning to experience arthritic pain in his or her left knee, asking for a friend, LOL. Well, I have personal experiences with this, Jerry, because I have like probably a torn labrum in my right hip, and it's basically kept at bay through strength training. But I started taking some joint supplementation a few years ago, and that also seemed to help me personally, anecdotally. And my father-in-law, a couple of years ago, he likes to buy stuff, as seen on TV and that kind of thing. And he's like, "Hey, I got this formula, and it's really helped me with my knees," right? Because he's always had knee and ankle issues, and he doesn't lift. He's more sedentary, but he does a lot with his hands around the house and stuff. So, and it had some of the compounds that I'm going to talk about right now. And so it wasn't too far from being a legitimate treatment. So first, what doesn't work? Well, there's things that have been touted for many years, glucosamine and chondroitin, and they're usually put together. And they're in your cartilage, and so they were thought to be helpful for joint health to supplement them. But there have been enough studies by now to show that it could be totally ineffective. There's actually no benefit to those, and I don't usually recommend those. The ones that the ones that could be helpful. So first of all, we have Omega-3 fatty acids, actually, a lot of people don't think about. A lot of people are deficient in them. They either don't eat enough fatty fish and or take fish oil or cod liver oil or krill oil supplements. And we know that there's a lot of anti-inflammatory benefits of omega-3 fatty acids, and therefore translating to reducing joint pain, joint stiffness, stuff like that. And so just making sure that that is at sufficient levels, you're not deficient, could help with joint pain. As far as actual direct supplements, type 2 collagen and curcumin, which is in turmeric, it's a spice, but you want to get the right types. And so I think in the post, I mentioned Legion's Fortify. That's actually what I take. And it has kind of the evidence supported types and amounts and bioavailability levels of the right things. Don't just take collagen protein, right? A lot of people think just consuming collagen protein is going to help. Not necessarily. It's a specific type of collagen at a certain level, dosage. And then curcumin, again, don't just like sprinkle turmeric on your food, although it doesn't hurt. Like, in fact, all the spicy foods also have anti-inflammatory effects too. So, like Indian cuisine and such. But there are specific compounds that come in supplements that are much more concentrated, higher dose, bioavailable. And if you go look at Legion Fortify, it gives a really good breakdown on that website about the product of each of these things, and you can follow the rabbit holes. So you just got to try like one thing. I mean, at the end of the day, like training properly, using proper equipment, using good form, sometimes using tempo or pauses instead of like going all out with your reps. Sometimes training with higher intensity and lower reps instead of lots of reps can be helpful for the joints. Some people squat really badly. They don't squat to depth, or they squat with too much knee slide. I know you don't, Jerry, you're like a super solid lifter, wearing knee wraps, wearing compression sleeves, all that stuff can be helpful. So hopefully that answers that question. And then Angela had a question. I love this one as well. Angela says, good morning. I am 52. I seem to have escaped hormone related challenges. However, I have PT clients who feel it's the hormones that are limiting their success. Hormones are beyond my scope, and I limit my coaching to fitness and nutrition. However, I'm researching to better understand, would really appreciate your insight on, can strength training impact hormones, specifically in menopausal women? Does strength training provide benefits in production and or regulation of hormones that can help with fat loss? Is strength training a good first step before trying HRT? So Angela, I love the question. I'm glad you're in the group. I love having other like fitness experts here. I'm not the type to, say you can't be in the group, because I think we all learn from each other and it helps everyone. Starting very high level of your last question, is strength training a good first step before trying HRT? I almost think that it's going to depend highly on the client. Obviously, I think strength training is something everyone should be doing right now, like today, if you're not doing it. So technically, then my answer would be yes, but I don't think you should wait on getting hormone levels tested and understanding, because you could definitely be, as you know, very deficient in certain hormones, men and women, men with testosterone, women with all the reproductive hormones, including testosterone. And so you don't want to wait for years just to see if the strength training like solves it, if it's that big of a deficiency. So I'm good with both, to be honest. I'm a big fan, and I don't think there are any risks or harms from bioidentical hormone replacement. A lot of fear mongering came out of the Women's Health Initiative study that gave people a misinterpretation of the evidence and, the links to cancer and all that. We're finding actually quite the opposite now. Bioidentical hormone replacement for women who need it actually helps reduce the risk of various cancers. But again, everyone should verify this and talk to a health professional. As far as the mechanisms specifically, let's go through them. The first big one that I love about strength training is insulin sensitivity. And because you mentioned, I know we're talking hormones, but I want to start there because that one is the root of a lot of evil in people's bodies, with blood sugar control, with fat accumulation, and then ultimately with body composition. So just understanding that strength training has the biggest impact on this stuff. And it's not all the other things that people are trying to do with their diet and fasting and low carb and fasted cardio and all that. It's strength training. So that's one reason to do it. When we talk about hormones, we know that strength training absolutely does stimulate more growth hormone, more testosterone. So just that alone will not only mitigate, but actually on the net improve the situation for anybody in terms of your blood work levels. Like if you do a before and after, you're going to see those go up. But again, if you are far deficient, they're not going to be high enough without hormone replacement therapy. So again, there's a place for both. And, testosterone and growth hormone are huge for muscle maintenance, muscle metabolism, or for your metabolism, I should say, for preserving lean mass, but also for building muscle. And then cortisol regulation. I know cortisol, there's all sorts of misinformation about cortisol. Strength training does help a lot with maintaining or modulating the levels and the volatility of your cortisol. And we know that when cortisol is elevated, you get more chronic stress that leads to fat storage and, more muscle breakdown, catabolism, right? And so that also helps hormonal balance. We also know that cortisol and the other hormones all interlink. There's a cascade. We could get into thyroid. We can get into other hormones. But yes, so the answer is, I feel like I should do a whole other podcast just on how strength training affects hormones. But I think that's good enough. So testosterone, growth hormone, it mitigates insulin. It gives you insulin sensitivity, and it helps with cortisol. And then all of those cascade to everything else. So could you get somebody started strength training for like 6 months as a lifestyle change and do it before and after? I would think that's a great strategy before you do HRT, just to isolate the variables. And that's what comes to mind. It's obviously highly depends on your specific client. So if you as an individual or one of your clients wants to come in here and post specifics and we can dive in, that's fine too. And that is it for Ask Philip. Please take advantage of this. This is a totally free live Q&A service here in the Wits and Weights Facebook community. The next one will be in 2 weeks. The post will be posted early next week. And please like and love the video below. Please follow up with comments below. If I helped answer your question, if I didn't, follow-ups and all that. And I hope you have an awesome weekend. Go lift those weights, use the wits like I always say in the podcast, and we will talk soon.